Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, we have some changing itineraries for some cruise ships. One, because of, possibility of violence. Two, because propulsion issues. There's always something going on. Then we also have a really happy report from one cruise port destination that says business was way up this year, and a lot of it was thanks to the weather, which is really confusing considering they just had a hurricane. So recently, Royal Caribbean has had to send out letters to guests on board the Celebrity Anthem and also the Oasis of the Seas, saying that they have had to change itineraries because of propulsion issues. Now, the least of which seems to be the Oasis of the Seas. They say one of their 3 propulsion pods is having an electrical issue. The crews are working on it. And it didn't really change too much of their destination. It basically made them arrive at Orlando about an hour later than expected. The rest of the itinerary is going on as planned, and there's no news if it will affect upcoming sailings, but they're basically on the same itinerary. Doesn't look like it's really going to affect that ship too much. However, on the Anthem of the Seas, they have changed the itineraries, saying that if you were scheduled to go into Bahamas or into Orlando, depending on the itinerary, that port is now changed and you will now be having a sea day instead. They're sorry about this. I guess the propulsion issues are a little worse because they're letting guests know all the way up until October that their sailings are going to be affected, and to compensate for missing the cruise port, they say they will be giving a 1-day credit for onboard usage on the ship, some onboard credits for basically the total of 1 day sailing. Again, propulsion issues, but that doesn't seem to be the main story that I'm now, because people, if you remember, just a few weeks ago, we saw a ship stuck up in Alaska that had to cancel 2 different sailings because its propulsion issues were not working, and people were kind of stuck in Alaska having to get home as well. Well, people are now questioning all these cutbacks that the cruise lines have now been doing. Is this starting to affect the maintenance on these cruise ships? And it's not always a case of maintenance on the cruise ships. The cruise lines are running repairs on the engines and diagnostics every day. They're running something on there. They're making sure everything's running smooth. They're monitoring it every single day. In fact, they don't need to run their engines all the time, all 3 engines or 4 engines, depending on what they're running. Just recently on the Caribbean Princess, when I was on her, we had a bridge tour, and one of their engines was completely shut down because we were just at cruising speed. We didn't need to go very quickly, and so they shut it down and were doing minor maintenance on the engine while that was going on. They do it all the time. Now, what could be happening is they do not have enough places to go to get any maintenance done. A cruise ship part isn't like an auto part that, could be just stored in a corner somewhere like a brake pad. If they need something, sometimes these things weigh tons and require an awful lot of work to get installed and fixed, etc. So I don't know if it's a maintenance thing or if it's just we need to find the places that can do this repair for us and try and do it while we're still sailing. Unless we're in dry dock, you can't blame a ship for breaking down. However, if they have cut back on scheduled maintenance, that would be a different story. But I have contacted some of my people inside the different cruise lines, and they are assuring me that they really aren't cutting back on maintenance that way. If there's any maintenance cut back, it's their painting kind of repairs. Like when you see rust spots on the outside of a ship, they're less inclined to be doing that as often as they were before. as a cost-cutting measure. And yeah, I've seen that on the cruise ships I've been sailing lately. Far more rust spots around your balconies and on the sides of the ship than I'm used to seeing. And I can see that maybe that's part where they have cut back the workload there. But as far as engine maintenance and stuff like that, they say no, they are on top of that, because if an engine breaks down and they can't sail, they lose money. And so to them, it's not worth doing. It's a cost balance, if you know what I mean. Good news for Carnival Cruise Line. Carnival Cruise Line out there is getting its whale tail back on the Carnival Freedom. That's right. Remember the Carnival Freedom? The funnel caught fire, and ever since then it's just been a straight funnel. And it looks like a Carnival design and everything, but it's not that iconic whale tail that Carnival is known for. Well, she's in dry dock right now, and she's getting her whale tail. So all the fleet will now look, she'll look like part of the regular fleet again. All right, Celebrity Apex. Celebrity Apex has had to change its itinerary. It was scheduled to be going into Israel, but unfortunately there are rising tensions and things going on in Israel right now, threats of violence, explosions, bombings, etc. And they are now saying that they are no longer going into Israel on their cruising. And I imagine more ships and more cruise lines are going to do this exact thing until things calm down, at least in the near future. They're canceling all the way into October and November again. And instead of going into Israel, they say, well, we'll have an overnight in Cyprus instead. So guests will get to enjoy that port even longer and spend an overnight time in a port, which is often quite nice. But a lot of people choose Israel for the religious factor, and it's kind of like a quest for them to go home and stuff like that. I imagine it will be pretty disappointing to some people out there, but the cruise lines are not going to walk into a zone that's potentially dangerous for their crew or their ship or their passengers. Gotta totally agree with that. There's a reason currently we don't go to Russia right now. Simple as that, right? And then we have some really good news coming from a cruise port that I recently visited. But before I get there, let me just invite you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you want to keep up to date with everything going on in cruising, from ship cancellations to ship repairs to ports being missed to compensation being offered to tips and tricks that might just save you a little headache and maybe even some money on your next cruise. Doesn't cost anything, but boy, it really does help the channel out when you subscribe. And again, I really, really do appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about my hometown, Halifax, Nova Scotia. I was born there. We were recently there. I was there with a whole group on board, and Tony was there with me. Angelina, my niece, was there, and all of our friends. We had a great time in the port. It's a great port to visit. Everything's like right there to walk around in. The shops are full. There's a museum there. There's sailing vessels there that you can get on and go on a day cruise. There's a bit of a Titanic history there. There's just so much. And then you have the iconic fort up on top as well, overlooking the city. It's an absolutely wonderful city. And they say this year that their money in the cruise port is way up. All the shops and businesses say that the money is way, way up. And I saw, and they're saying it's because of great weather. Now, if you followed me on the Caribbean trip, you know that every day we were saying, I can't believe how nice the weather is, how great the weather's been, considering just about 4 days before it, a hurricane went through that area when we were on our way. And then there was another hurricane developing behind us. But when I was on the ship, the captain and crew members told me that this is the first sailing this year on that ship that hadn't had to cancel a port. They were able to sail the whole thing. So I would figure that with that kind of bad weather, that business would be down. But apparently, Halifax, they say it's way up. It's up 27% over last year. Businesses are thrilled. The businesses when we were in port were packed. All the bars, all the restaurants, the museums, everybody was full. with big smiles because it was a beautiful day. There was one that was weird. It was weird. They have a poutine place in this outdoor, like, chip wagon kind of place where all the specialty foods are all there. They have a pizza one. They have Cal's ice cream there. They have all these beaver tails. They have all these little shacks to buy things, a little eat it. Really fun place. And there's one place, it was poutine. And it was the only place closed. We didn't understand. Every other place, there's like 19 other places, they were all open. The poutine shack was closed. Not sure why. I guess they made enough money because everybody else was saying how great that the cruise ships were coming this year. Very few had to cancel, and wow, their revenue is way, way up. That's a good cruise news story, and I'm glad for my home city that they're getting that cruise business because they seem to be thriving. It doesn't affect much of the rest of the city because everyone kind of stays right there around the cruise port because there's so much there to do. If you get a chance, Halifax, Nova Scotia, a great cruise port to visit. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.